Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
Break free from the forces holding you back. Get the life you deserve. Eliminate stress, reduce anxiety, decrease depression, and start living your full potential. Thousands have used Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory, an evidence-based behavioral health breakthrough with incredible life-changing results. Getting rid of past trauma, having fulfilling relationships, increasing earnings, and living their best life. Now, the Foojan app is available to everyone. The app is Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory in the palm of your hand. Download the Foojan app today.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Inner Voice podcast, a heartfelt chat with my guests and you beautiful listeners and viewers. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine. I'm a psychotherapist and author and the originator of the awareness integration theory. It's so great to be with all of you. For all of you who are interested in the awareness integration theory, please go to awarenessintegration.com. You can also go to the app, Foojan app, and you can practice every angle of your life, over 30 areas of your life on Foojan app. And we found this 60% fulfillment and satisfaction and improvement in every area of life that people have worked on the app. So Foojan app, go get it. And for all of you who are therapists or coaches across the world, please, we want to train you so that you can be also on Foojan app and people can utilize your services in a way that could be totally useful for them in their lives to create a fulfilling life. In this episode, I am so excited that I chat with Jeanine Cogan, who's a mindfulness meditation teacher and executive consultant. She's earned her PhD, a doctorate in social psychology, and has edited 2 other books and published many articles in the academic journals. She has studied and practiced in the tradition of Thich Nhat since 1996. She's a member of the Washington Mindfulness Communities Practice Council and received her Dharma name, Loving Peace of the Heart, in 2008. Her name reminds her that all she needs to be is at peace and in connection with her own breath. Jeanine is passionate about teaching meditation to others in the community, at conferences, and in the workplace, as well as weaving it into her professional coaching with her client. A former academic, Jeanine has edited 2 books and written more than 20 articles for professional journals. We are also joined by Mary Hillebrand. She's a former magazine editor and a writer and is now the teacher and enjoys teaching mindfulness to high school and adult students and other educators. And they talk about their new book, Tears Become Rain, Stories of Transformation and Healing, inspired by Thich Nhat Hanh. They offer an intimate encounter with the wisdom of the most influential monk and peace activist of the past centuries. Mary's Dharma name is Attentive Listening of the Heart. Reminds her that although she has often been able to impact others by using her voice, stopping to be fully present and listen and can be so powerful. This is an accumulation of so many beautiful authors, people who experienced amazing experiences, and they share with you what has happened for them, the journey that they've had, and who they are today. And every single story shares with you what it can be possible for you when you are with your breath, when you listen deeply, and when you take on the path of really getting to know who you are and the power in you. So you could check out www.tearsbecomerain.org. Now, you need to know that all profits from the sale of this book are being donated to Thich Nhat Hanh Foundation. We had an amazing conversation, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. We went through some of the experiences that each one of us have had. And I hope that listening to our conversation gives you as much as it gave me. Subscribe to this podcast, my YouTube channel, and connect with me through my website. I love to hear from you. You can go to FoojanZeine.com if you want to go through the app, Foojan.com, any of the social media, Dr. Foojan Zeine, I'm available to talk to you. Share with me your thoughts, and I love to hear from you. So without further ado, here are Jeanine and Mary.
Eliminate stress, reduce anxiety, and decrease depression. Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory has helped thousands like you get incredible life-changing results. The Foojan app gives you her evidence-based treatment in the palm of your hand. Download today.
Well, it is so nice to have the two of you with me, Jeanine Cogan and Mary Hillebrand. It is a beautiful time to share with you to share you with my audience, the people who are watching us, who are listening to us. And you have created a volume of your experience and other people's experience. And you brought it in this beautiful book, Tears Become Rain. And these are stories of transformation and healing inspired by Thich Nhat Hanh. So first, I wanted to welcome you to the show. And then if each one of you shares a little bit about who you are and why Thich Nhat Hanh.
Well, thank you for having us on the show, Foojan. We're really grateful. And so Tears Become Rain is a book that came out of our direct experience, Mary and I. And the idea, both of us, we met each other years ago when we were meditating as part of a community. And this particular community, we would listen to talks by Thich Nhat Hanh and read books by Thich Nhat Hanh. And so that's how Mary and I first met. And over time, for me, his teachings and the community of meditators really around the globe, because there's what we call sanghas, which means communities all around the world that meditate in this particular tradition and read his books and listen to his teachings. So I was wanting to come up with, it was right around the time that he had a stroke. So Thich Nhat Hanh had a stroke a number of years ago. And so he couldn't talk anymore. And I think we were all sort of processing this. I know I was. And I thought, I really want to give back to this community that gave me so much. And how could I do that? And I'm someone who really loves the power of stories and storytelling. My dad was an Irish roots guy who would tell stories. That was his way of sharing and how you got to know him. And so I thought, well, what if I put together a book of all these people telling their stories of how Thich Nhat Hanh positively impacted them. And that's when I reached out to Mary, who has great editorial experience. And I'll let you take it from here if you want, Mary.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on today, Foojan. Jeanine and I had, as she said, a nice shared practice already. And so for me, joining the project, once I figured out that, that was the next step on my path, it was just such a joy. And it was not a very difficult decision, because what we realized and what we were hoping to harness in the power of the community was that we kind of spoke the same language, and yet it's not a language that excludes, that somebody else would have a difficult time understanding. But it was basically, this language of mindfulness has been spreading and expanding and being reinterpreted, especially in recent years, so much in so many different areas of our lives and people's lives. For me in particular, in my career, I've been fortunate enough to be able to work mindfulness into my teaching and my work with the patients at the job that I'm at now. And so, working on this project was such an easy choice, because it was just another way to get those stories, that commonality that we all have. We all struggle We all want peace. We all want to be happy. The book, Jeanine's idea of this book really resonated with me for that reason, because like Jeanine was saying, she's very much into stories. And I was, a writer for a long time. As a journalist, I did a lot of storytelling, so to speak, and stories bring people together. That's one of the things that's so important to me, and that I try to do in my personal life, my professional life, is how can my presence, but also how can what I bring to the room, how can I bring people together? And in the world today, I don't know how many people are out there who are going to dispute the idea that we all need to come together a little more. So this is a book that can do that.
It's beautiful. I know that for myself, I'm a therapist, so I deal with a lot of suffering consistently. Maybe sometimes I have 12 to 13 clients per day, and sit from one element to another of their suffering and their view of the world and how they view the world that might create the suffering for them. And I remember working with at the hospital and almost 3 years working with people who were deciding to terminate their life, and how to sit with them while they changed their mind. And, some didn't change their mind. And that brought me for the first time into the world of looking beyond psychology, just to look into the brain of a human being and looking at how we thought, and went beyond to bring some peace and of mind, some other view, something that was there that brought a bigger picture to all of us. And as I heard you, Jeanine, you said that I wanted to bring back and give to the community, and the spirit that gave me so much. And I wanted to ask each one of you, what had that, Thich Nhat Hanh gave you in the spirit or in your heart, and how did the community, as all of you were together and brought so many of the voices and the stories of them together, has enriched not only you, the community, and now you are extending that richness to the world?
It's a great follow-up question. I would say what it brought me, it also is articulated through a number of our contributors in the book. And it would be part 3, coming home to ourselves. So we have about 5 or 6 contributors from United States, Vietnam, France, and Norway, different those different countries. But so for me, it was really a coming home to myself. And what do I mean by that in terms of lived experience? I had kind of climbed the ladder of success. I had done everything that I had been told from my culture that would bring me happiness. So I had a doctorate, I had a good job, I was doing cool research, I had a condo, I had a cat, I had all these things. And what I noticed was I had this kind of, it was sort of this quiet or low grade, just under the surface, kind of a discontentedness, like an uneasiness. And it was subtle enough that I didn't notice it most of the time, but it was there. And when I was alone, this is before cell phones, I wonder now how many people miss these cues because they've got cell phones to keep them distracted. But anyway, when I was alone is when I would notice it, just sort of this like, I didn't feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, I also have a psychology degree, and mine's in social psychology. And I thought, there's something else, what is it? And it seemed like it was something spiritual I was seeking. So fast forward, it's about a year later, and I ended up meeting a woman when I moved to Washington, D.C., and she introduced me to meditation and to Thich Nhat Hanh. And I sat for the first time, meaning conscious breathing. I did meditation, breathing in, I feel my in breath, breathing out, I feel my out breath. And I was just doing that. noticing the thoughts as they came up, not getting caught in them, right? Just coming right back to the breath. And after doing that for whatever, 20 minutes, I had that fundamental sense of like a relief, like an exhale. This is it. This is what I've been looking for. It's been here all along. It wasn't out there. And it was just this sort of relaxing into the moment, relaxing into me, like a fundamental okayness. Like I'm okay fundamentally. And this moment is okay as it is.
I was actually talking to a person this morning, and I said something, what you just said was the experience, which I found myself still inspired, motivated, wanting to move forward. But the energy was not around like do, and get. And it was this like, and it's like just being that, and then it just funnels through and it gets created. And yes, I'm going to do whatever it needs to be done in order to get created. But the anxiety and that edginess was no longer there. It's just what you just said, like be and experience the beauty of this, which when the time shows up and knowing what I need to do, then effortlessly I will do what I need to do in order to, the result to show up. It was very different where before it was like, let me see the goal, what it is that I need to do. I need to do these things. And, I got to. And that was more of like that tense way of being versus like you said, the breath. And just being with your breath, which is the most important factor. It seems like if it's not there, you're not going to live. And allow that to happen. This morning, I actually had this experience of constantly like allowing. Mary?
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that because I've been thinking a lot lately about this idea of, for me, I'm a very kind of people-oriented person. I've chosen, teaching and therapeutic environments, for that reason, because I want to work with people. But when you asked, what did Thich Nhat Hanh give, or what did he provide? For me, I think it turned out to, among other things, be this assurance that I'm not alone, at the time that I was learning about Buddhism and I hadn't really, learned a lot about the various teachers, but it all sounded like something that really resonated with me. One of the things I was struggling with was that I had grown up in a very committed Catholic heritage and a family that went to church and was in all the community activities. I went to Catholic school. I did all the things. And even in my young adulthood, I tried to continue that. And I knew when I stopped to listen, being still shows us the way, right? When I finally stopped to listen, I knew that wasn't feeding me. It wasn't steering me the way I wanted it to. But I also didn't want to lose that, sense of community and support and togetherness. And, Thich Nhat Hanh really expresses the teachings of the Buddha well when it comes to many things, but certainly for me, when it came to the power of community and the importance of showing up for your community, and the community shows up for you. And he also, the very first book that I read by Thich Nhat Hanh was one called Living Buddha, Living Christ. And the whole point of the book was you don't need to let go of your heritage, and you don't need to let go of those things that were positive for you in your other religious practice necessarily in order to learn more and embrace and use the teachings of the Buddha. They can go together. And that was very freeing for me. Once I kind of processed that in my head, I just dove right in. I was like, yay, this is great for me. But the key, and I used it again this morning, 20 something years later, the key is being still shows me the way. This morning I was all frantic before leading a group because I hadn't led this group before, and I was all, like that. And I thought, you know what? Whatever else you could be doing right now, don't do it. Just sit. Just sit. Breathe in, breathe out, and you'll know. And it sounds so simple. It is simple, and it's hard. It takes practice, but I'm really grateful for it.
You talked about not being alone, and you guys have put this kind of poem in there from Thich Nhat Hanh, which is, I hold my face in my two hands.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not crying. I hold my face in my two hands to keep the loneliness warm. That is so beautiful, to keep the loneliness warm.
Mm-hmm.
Hands protecting, two hands nurturing, two hands preventing my soul from leaving me in anger. That is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone, tears become rain, stories of transformation and healing inspired by Thich Nhat Hanh and edited by Jeanine, Cogan, and Mary Hillebrand. So then you went to all of your community members who also have been inspired. And each one of them stated their story in a particular way. So can you guys share with us what your friends and colleagues have brought into this onto the table for this book?
Vulnerability. What a gift. And we often, rightfully probably, think of vulnerability as a scary thing, a risk, woo, don't be vulnerable, whatever, don't show yourself. These authors went to places where they had to revisit some really hard things. And that is such a beautiful gift for them to say, you know what, I learned something and I really want to give it to the world. So I would say that's one of the things that always comes to mind first for me with this book, is that these are a bunch of human beings, and not even celebrities or famous people. They're everyday people. They come from 16 different countries around the world and all walks of life. They do a lot of different things. And yet all of the stories are accessible. And I think it's because they put their honesty and their heart into sharing what they went through to help other people.
And I'll build on that. I would say this book is about hope. People are writing about experiences that are universal to us as humans. So it's death, it's despair, it's fear, it's kind of losing your way, like my story showed. It's reconciliation with someone in your life that you have fallen out with. And so it's a sense of feeling worthy, right? One woman writes about experiencing brutal racism. So we have a whole range of topics. And what the authors do is they take us kind of on the hero's journey, when they were potentially in their most vulnerable time, like Mary is pulling out, and then how they got through it. And now they're on the other side. And so that's ultimately inspirational.
Yes. So one of the things that I'm sensing is there's a before and after kind of solid difference of experience. And in the middle, although each person takes their own path in the middle, but one thing that has been clear is that sitting, being connected to your breath, as Jeanine experiences, listening deeply, as Mary experiences, and somehow that middle part, the connection has been the meditation, and the meditation through the Thich Nhat Hanh's experience or
Mhm.
sharings, or the beauty of how he brings all that shows up for him and shares it with the world. So each person has a before, and then as they go through this, there's a after, or there's a presence.
Mhm.
Can each one of you not only share what your before and presence is a bit, but also in the middle, what really, out of all the things that you have experienced, not only through your meditations, but also through, and the reason I say this is because obviously I have interviewed with a lot of people who go through meditations. I do it myself. But the two of you chose to look at it because of the inspiration that was brought by Thich Nhat Hanh. So if you can share with us and the audience, what about Thich Nhat Hanh that has that? How come his words? How come his inspirations in between all the other inspiring gurus that are out there? Something about what the transformation of his essence and his sharings brought some sort of a transformation for the two of you and your colleagues. Mary?
Yeah, sure. Well, if we go in chronological order, right, the before part for me was, I was in my early 30s, and I think I'm not unlike a lot of people who try out meditation. I was at a place in my life where things just weren't right. I had left a job because I was completely stressed out and burned out. A relationship ended unexpectedly, because I wasn't paying attention. It was the right thing to do, but so there, sometimes we come to these crossroads and we feel kind of adrift, right? And Thich Nhat Hanh kind of has built on this idea that the Buddha originally taught about, using the teachings of mindfulness and coming back to our breath and being fully present as kind of a raft to get over, to get us to the other side or get us, through the rough parts. And that was kind of what I needed. I was reaching for a raft, right? And so, to the question of why Thich Nhat Hanh, what was it about him? And as is reflected in these stories in the book, Thich Nhat Hanh didn't make up Buddhism, right? There have been many, many teachers, and there are many, many different traditions and many different ways of practicing and learning about and studying and teaching it. But his way is very simple, without even beginning to suggest that it's not hard. And he acknowledges that there are a lot of things that go on to make it seem complicated, but his way of using the language made it very accessible. He quite often teaches in his own books and in his own talks. He teaches in terms of short stories as well, which is why Jeanine's idea of a book of short stories was so brilliant, because we knew one of the reasons why it worked so well for each of us individually was that you don't need to study, a big thick tome, or study for a certain amount of time before you get to experience or begin to glimpse that there's hope for you. Thich Nhat Hanh talks in very short vignettes, and that's what we wanted from our authors. We asked them to keep it short. Each of these could easily be expanded into pretty, compelling longer stories, but he simplified it. He made it accessible to me. And the other thing that really solidified it for me anyway was just his own presence, his own example. When someone tells me, be calm, but they're not calm, right? We often take the energy in as much as we take the words in. And so just being around Thai, as we often call him, it just means beloved teacher in Vietnamese, being around Thai automatically calmed me before I even heard him speak a word. And several of our authors write about that too. And it's not to say, okay, so sorry for all of you who are reading the book now, you don't get to do that because he's not around in his body anymore. That's not true, because all of us can be that. And that's what I'm really happy about in terms of the progress that I feel like I've made in terms of understanding this and making it a part of my life, is that every day at different times of the day, I remember that how I enter a room, how I am with the people around me has a huge impact. And it's because of his example. So today, I work as a teacher. I work in an environment where every single person I'm working with has been through tremendous suffering and has had really difficult things that they've had to deal with and are still dealing with. And I get to be Ty, I get to show up as him. As one of our authors writes, Vicky MacArthur's story is called Ty in Disguise, right? Because she wrote actually about having to kind of come to terms with the fact that he was not going to be here in body anymore. And gosh, what does that mean? Like, where's he going to be? What are we going to do? And Ty said, but we are all interconnected. We, interbeing, right, is this idea that we carry each other with us. And so she wrote her story about going around being Ty at a retreat where he wasn't there. And I think about that a lot, that I can be Ty where I am now.
Beautiful. Jeanine?
I would say what resonated with me so much with Thich Nhat Hanh was his emphasis on joy. So it was, I found these teachings in my early 30s as well. And I needed that seed in me to be watered, the seed of joy. And he talks about how when you water your seeds of joy, two wonderful things happen. One is you feel joy, right? And who doesn't want more of that in their lives? We all could use that. But secondly, the more I water my seeds of joy, it's like making a fertile ground for me to be able to hold the suffering. And I think at the time, I couldn't go to sort of the harder places in myself yet. My, experiences that probably bring people to therapists like you, right? Because I couldn't go there yet, right? So by watering my seeds of joy over time, and I would say years, I was able to, now I'm able to go to those more difficult places, and I don't get overwhelmed, because when we strengthen our joy, we strengthen ourselves, and then we can hold things, we can hold it all with more wisdom and more capacity,
As you guys were talking, it showed up for me as I remember coming from a very traumatic childhood, and then my conversation was, I have to fix it, So it was about fixing it. And even when I became a therapist, it was like I was going to find the tools to fix it. Anybody who wanted to be fixed, then we're going to fix it. And more, it's come that what you just said about the suffering is, for a long time, I thought suffering was bad.
right?
And it was more like I held like this negative connotation around it, that as soon as possible, we were going to go in war with suffering, and we were going to get you out of suffering, force you into the joy. And a lot more has shown up about, some people, including myself. I had to go through that suffering to create so much inner power. And suffering is suffering, and it is what it is. And like you said about how to hold it and honor it. And it has changed a lot for me to have a different view of suffering, to be able to honor it. And from, like you said, from the joy, from the comfort, from the deep listening that Mary shared. And it's interesting that when we are honoring it, whether it's my own or now my clients or other people who are around me, sometimes people choose to stay in the suffering because that's all they know. And even in that gives them the comfort. And some people choose to let it go and allow it to be, or they get comfortable with it, or they choose to let it go and never, never have the suffering again. But it has become more and more of this acceptance of all is well.
And I think there's sort of a third aspect to that too, which is some people aren't necessarily choosing it, but their habit energy is so strong. And it's built up over many years and many messages that we get from the society we live in, that perhaps by a certain age, we should have X, Y, and Z, and that would mean that we've made it, or that we'll be free from suffering, or, we get these kind of these messages that set us up. And if we really have been striving for a long time based on that messaging, then it's really hard to undo the habits. Especially, I think a really powerful example of this is as we age, our bodies are of the nature to decline, right? Before we die, our bodies are already in the process of dying, right? Every moment. And we can cling to this idea that, hey, I'm whatever age I am, I should still be able to do this. Like, that doesn't seem old enough that I can't do this anymore. That's when we suffer. But when we recognize that this is a natural part of the process, and I think another aspect of that causes us to suffer is wanting this assurance that it's not always going to be like this. And one thing that I learned from this practice is and I'm not for a second going to say that I'm great at it and that I've got it all the time, but at least I'm remembering it, right? Which is learning to be okay with not knowing whether I'm going to be okay, right? Mm-hmm. Like, take that in for a second. Mm-hmm. Being okay with not knowing, then the suffering can subside a little bit, right? Like, and being okay with not knowing comes down to being in the present moment, right? What I do know is right here and right now. And as Jeanine said, joy, we all want joy. Well, I can find joy in the present moment if I look for it. And this practice and the process of watering those seeds within me, making myself available to joy, can make it much more accessible, and I can do it more often. And now I do it a lot. And I used to just suffer a lot, right? But a lot of that suffering was based on this notion I had that, well, if I can just get to whatever point, then I'll know that I'm going to be okay. Right now it's feeling rocky, it's feeling uncomfortable, or I'm all torn up inside, or whatever, or my loved one is. But if we can get to this point, then it'll be okay and I can relax. Well, I don't know that my loved ones are going to be okay either. I want them to be, but I think that the way for them to be okay is to be present. When we're all present together, we've all probably, hopefully, had some of those moments where we're all together and we just look around at each other and kind of like laugh and enjoy that moment of like, look how we are right now, right? That's the key for me.
Beautiful. Jeanine?
Thank you. Just wanted to add, I think what's so important is for us to just kind of accept and know it's true of every human on the planet, that there'll be joy and there'll be suffering. There'll be both, right? And the more that we can relax into that, the better we'll be. Like, I think in a lot of religious traditions, or just growing up in at least American culture, you're always trying to avoid what's uncomfortable, right? Or avoid the suffering. And if you have it, often one of the first thoughts is, what did I do to deserve this? Well, you were born, you're a human. We all, you don't deserve it. It's just part of the human condition. And that for me was a real game changer. Mm-hmm. And I realized, We all have ups and downs. No, but nothing's wrong when I have a down, right? That's like beating yourself up when you're already having some sort of challenging time in your life or difficult emotion. But there's no, it's kind of like not making the distinction between good and bad. It just is, like Mary's saying. And so just being with what is instead of rejecting it.
Yeah, every time I go into this mode, and I got it that it's not, just being human, but, imagine that we were still living as one of these animals in the wild, that every morning as you woke up, the only thing you had to know is whether I was going to be eaten or not and what I'm going to eat. And suffering, with everything around it was just part of it is a part of everyday concept. But I think that as human beings, we think it shouldn't be.
Right.
Tears become rain. Stories of transformation and healing inspired by Thich Nhat Hanh, edited by Jeanine Cogan and Mary Hillebrand. We have about a minute or so for each of you to kind of see what is it we haven't shared and you really, really want people to know.
If I could just jump in, I got a text from somebody this morning that said,
Mary.
I think she froze.
No, I'm so anticipating.
Yeah, and
lost her.
I guess you're going to share with us. Oh, there she is.
Oh, there she is.
"Oh, I don't know what happened. My Zoom just like stopped and then it
Well,
reconnected.
we're all
Sorry
waiting to
about
hear
that.
what your
I
text
know. We're on
said.
pins and needles. Yeah. So, well, the text was from someone who has the book. I gave the book to them, and they said, "I'm still working my way through your book, and it's a lot to take in, and it's going pretty slowly." It sounded like sort of, of course, I'm reading the tone in a text, so who knows, but it sort of sounded like with consternation, and it said, I don't know how people can just keep going in this book and keep, and take it all in because it's so much. And I thought to myself, well, it's short stories. That's the whole reason why, is because if somebody asked me how to read this book, if they're not sure themselves, lots of people approach books the way they do, right? But if they asked me how to read this book, I would say, open it up, maybe look at the table of contents if you want to see the different themes. Maybe one of those themes will resonate with how you're feeling in that moment, right? Because hopefully you've stopped and you've looked for a second at yourself, like, okay, here I am, and I want to read this book, so look in there, read one story and put it down. I don't see it as a like cover to cover experience. There are some books where I just cannot. I have to start at the beginning and I got to keep going because it's that kind of a great story, whatever. No, the whole point of this is it's like little in the practice of Buddhism, there's this word dharma, which just means, learning about the practice, learning about the teachings of the Buddha. These are each little dharma talks, and they're capsules by themselves. And what I love about this book, Jeanine's heard me say this a million times now, but every single day, something will happen in my day that reminds me of one of those stories, one of the things that I learned in this story. I've read the book 50 times now, probably, and I will still go back and read the stories because at different times in our lives, every moment is new. So at different times in our lives, something in there that we read before that had one impact will have another impact. And that's what I love about the book, and what I love about it as a gift to people, is that it's a resource that will live on for a long time in that way.
Thank you, Jeanine.
I would say what I want your readers or your listeners to hear is that when you can get through a difficult experience in your life well, it gives you confidence. And that's what this book is all about.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to be with me and everyone who's listening or viewing us. And the book is available, right? And in Amazon and everywhere else that people want to get the book from. And thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. It was really nice.
And for all of you who are out there, create an amazing life for yourself, everyone around you. And until next week, bye-bye.
Eliminate stress, reduce anxiety, and decrease depression. Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory has helped thousands like you get incredible life-changing results. The Foojan app gives you her evidence-based treatment in the palm of your hand. Download today.